Hello and welcome to our podcast, The Art of Experiences, where we are talking to you today from our base in Dubai, the UAE. We are the guys who have created, enjoyed, designed and choreographed some of the best experiences in the best locations around the world.
Today we will be podcasting episode 9 in our new series, The Art of Experiences, where we will be having a conversation with Arjun. We are Nick, Ravi and Arjun. We are designers, architects and techies. Above all, we are on a journey to tell the wider world why some experiences just work and some do not.
Okay guys, it's great to be here and I'm really looking forward to chat with you too, that I do not get to do that often.
Oh, okay, all right.
Except after 5 o'clock. That's another story.
Yeah, let's not bring in the after hours chat here.
Exactly. Okay.
All right, it says me. I'm supposed to read that now. So chaps, today we will be continuing the format called Just Chatting, and it's a wonderful format actually, and it's quite relaxed, and it kind of, you know, it doesn't interrogate, but it kind of brings a nice side of the person who is being questioned actually.
Yeah, it's funny actually. It was an idea that we just kind of had out of the blue really, and we've had some very positive feedback from people across the world. Thank you to those listeners that have given us your feedback, saying that it's actually, one of the things I like about it is that it's very real, very authentic, and I guess that's what we're all about really. I mean, we want to try and share our experiences with you guys and try and, if we can, help you guys to learn something from the things we've achieved and also learn from some of the mistakes we've made. Yeah, I mean, we've perhaps hit on something here that seems to resonate with people, so thanks for all the positive feedback.
Perfect. So Arjun, are you ready to answer the questions?
Yes. I mean, this is the best thing for me, right? No preparation whatsoever, because I wouldn't know what questions you guys are going to ask.
Unlike normal, when Arjun comes with like a book of notes, today the only notes he's got are tucked between those ears. And by the way, guys, don't you think he looks a bit like George Clooney? He does have a certain look about him, doesn't he? Yeah. That's another story.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of like I don't know, an icon. But where should we start, Ravi? I mean, we're here to talk about Arjun's career, probably first and foremost. So maybe, Arjun, perhaps you could start by telling us where you're from and what your career is. What do you do for a living? And I know the lines are blurred a lot between your personal life and your professional life, but if you can try and describe a little bit about what you do in a professional capacity, that would be
let
helpful.
our viewers know what this Clooney does about.
Sure. So, yes, I'm Arjun. I am from Kerala in India, and I'm basically an architect. So yes, like very many people that you speak to, they have had some sort of a moment which kind of defined their path towards architecture. I do not have anything of that sort. I'll be honest.
Is where the money was,
I'll be extremely honest. I was actually gearing up all my life to be probably an electronics or a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
And for me, that it looked like that's a path that I'm going to take.
Yeah.
And after my 12th standard, that's usually when people back in India would appear for the entrance test to decide whether they want to be an engineer or a doctor or any other professional course that they want to take. I was introduced to this whole thing called architecture. It intrigued me a lot what this is all about. In fact, it's my one of my relatives who was based in Dubai. He's still here, actually. He was there for his vacation, and he said, "Do you know that architects are in high demand in Dubai?" And I'm like, "What is an architect? What does he do?" And that's when it all started. And call it coincidence, call it fate, call it whatever anybody want to call it. I ended up being an architect. I did enjoy the journey, which took me 5 years to be an architect. It was grueling and tough and painful many a times, and a lot enjoyable in many other times. But yes, that's what I am. I'm an architect. Now, I started my journey while doing the course of architecture. I got pulled in various different directions. So one was graphic design. I thought I'm a better graphic designer than an architect. So I started my career as a graphic designer. 6 months later, I found that I'm really bad at it. So I quit.
I can vouch for that. I'm joking, joke.
So I quit being a graphic designer, and in fact, my work was in a different town from where I lived, so I had to wake up at 5 in the morning, catch the train, go for my work, and be back home only by 8:30, 8:45 in the night. So the only time that I would get is take a shower, have a dinner, speak to mom and dad and grandmother for a bit of time, go to bed early because you need to wake up at about 4:30 in the morning to catch the train the next day. It was tough 6 months. Probably I hated being a graphic designer because of that, because I was never a morning person. I love sleeping early in the morning. So yes, 6 months later I quit being a graphic designer, and I came back to my roots, which was being an architect, and I started designing a lot of residential projects in Kerala. Soon enough, everybody started saying that specific parts of your project look really beautiful, like a column here, a furniture there, or something which is more related to product.
Right.
And that's when I decided to move into product design. And this time I did consult with a lot of my professors, and they all had the kind of same opinion that Arjun, yes, you have a flair to design products, which is something that we have noticed during your college days. And that's when I took the journey towards being a product designer. And I took, I went to Italy to do my master's in product and living accessory design. After that, I worked as a product designer for about 2.5 years. And then came the calling from Dubai. So yes, I started my journey in Dubai in 2014 as a contractor. All of a sudden, all those years of learning about products and everything related to industrial design was of no use for me. At least that's how I felt it right at the start. I was being a contractor, standing on site with the client, and the client asked me a very simple question. Because I was a junior person, the client probably thought not to burden me with a tough question. He asked me, how is a drywall partition made? And I just lost it because I didn't have the answer.
Unlike now. Yeah, exactly.
All of a sudden I just went pale because I didn't have the answer. If the person had asked me something about injection molding or die casting, I had the answer. But all of a sudden when she asked me, how is a drywall partition made? I'm like, there is a structure, and then you put gypsum partition on both sides. This was my answer, and I was not satisfied with my answer too. And then it pushed me towards a journey where I started understanding how things are made. And it was a very tough journey because, first of all, I had to accept that I knew nothing, which is a very tough thing after completing your master's and you start working. But I did accept that. I accepted that tough truth.
7 years of study, Arjun, as well, and 2 years at work. And all of a sudden you realise...
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know the basics. So being contractor in Dubai for about 2.5 years and executing a whole lot of projects, probably about 35 projects across Dubai, taught me a lot of things. It not only taught me in terms of interior fit out, but I also learned a lot regarding the MEP services, which is an integral part of any of the projects in Dubai. And from there, I moved on to being a consultant, where all those experience that I had as a contractor, as a furniture designer, because something that I didn't mention was I was also part of a factory which manufactured wooden furniture for almost about 2 years in my life, soon after my master's. So I had that experience with me, product designer experience, architecture, and then being a contractor. It kind of all came together while I was being that consultant. And like Steve Jobs said, you can connect the dots only looking backwards. You cannot connect the dot looking forward. So it all started making sense to me at that point of time, the kind of journey that I took. And now here with you guys, I'm moving on to the next stage in my career, where it's not just about managing site, but it's also about managing regions, managing clients, managing team members. So yes, I'm enjoying that journey.
I think it's interesting listening to you, Arjun, because there's a few lessons to learn from the story that you've told. I mean, first of all, you don't have to understand your passion before you. Excuse me, my phone was ringing. You don't have to understand your passion when you start off in life, number one. And number two, I think that anybody that argues that an education in architecture or design is an education wasted really doesn't understand the value of the education you get in architecture and design. I mean, understanding structure, how things are made, understanding how to make things, not just how they're made, but how to actually make them. And then how to manage the making of those things, and to structure this kind of strategic, creative development and implementation way of thinking is a lesson that can be applied to anything, including lessons in life, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's interesting listening to you speak how all of these parts, if you look at them in isolation, you think, well, you're an architect, why don't you want to be an architect? So you go and learn how to be a graphic designer. Well, why don't you want to be a graphic designer? So you want to be a contractor. Well, why don't you continue being a contractor? It's only later on, as you say, in life, when you understand all of these things come together to shape you into the person you are today. And again, another lesson is to try things, to not be afraid. You know, to just because people say normally your peers say, or your family or whatever say that you have to go down a certain path, doesn't always the best path. I mean, you went to Italy. Arjun went to one of the best product design schools in the world, guys, and one that during certain periods, I think probably safe to say during the 90s and 2000s, I don't know still actually, because I too am a product designer, had a reputation for being the best of the best, and I'm sure it still does, and to go in that direction away from what you learn is really a lesson. You know, just to be brave and just to follow your heart and do what you want to do, and then at some point in the future, all of those paths converge, and all of the lessons you've learned all come together and can be applied in a way that makes you who you are today. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting, your journey so far, Arjun. So, you said that you passed out from architecture and then you started working as a graphic designer, because that's where your intuition led you to do that. And I have seen, especially in architectural students, people actually go out and do a lot of other stuff. Like for example, my friend went out and he said, I want to do set designing, and he went out to do set designing, spent 2 years there, and then came back, and then he's doing fantastic work in the architectural world today. So my question to you is that do these experiences teach you and help you when you actually finally come back and start doing what you were meant to be doing, or finally when you find your what they call the calling? Do these kind of different experiences help you?
Definitely it does. So one of the common things which most of the people, I'm not sure if I can generalize the statement, but at least with my limited experience, a lot of people misunderstand what architecture course or learning or the BR degree is all about. They get into this one-track mind that I'm going to be designing buildings, I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be doing that, I'm going to be creating wonderful buildings where people are going to say, wow, looking at it. Unfortunately, that's not what architecture is, at least for me. It's more like an open platform for you to open up your mind, to look at things in a different perspective. So every single thing that you interact with on a daily basis, there is design involved in it. From the toothbrush that you use in the morning, to the car you drive, to the air condition that keeps you cool, to the chairs that you sit, to the shoes you wear, to the glasses that we use.
Even the way you cut your hair and you shape your own appearances, there's design involved in that.
Exactly. So every single thing has got a certain element of design, a certain element of thinking, and a lot of effort gone into it. And to me, architecture course was more of that platform, which allowed me to try different things. And one of the things that probably I got it from my dad, wherein I had this deep-rooted belief that without trying something, you should never say, I'm not good at it, or I'm amazing at it.
Very true.
So so all the journey that I took, I experimented with my life. My car or my wagon was running slower than a lot of other people in comparison to me. They were doing amazingly well, and my family was like, when is this guy going to start earning in life? And I'm like, no, I'm not done with my experiments with myself. So that went on for a decent period of time before I actually picked up momentum. But once I picked up momentum, I don't think I would be lying if I say I have left a lot of people way far behind in terms of what I have picked up during that journey. So yes, it did help. It does help me on a daily basis.
Can I ask you another question, Arjun? Because you've talked, and Ravi last week, I don't know whether you guys have listened to our icon and speaking last week. I was going to say something.
Oh no!
That was what I was going to say. But yeah, it's something similar. You've talked about
5 p.m. yet?
Both of you talked a lot, and you, Arjun, have talked a lot about what you've learned in the past. Okay, and listening to you speak, you've learned a lot of stuff. You probably, although you're a very, very smart guy, you've probably forgotten more than you've learned. No, you've forgotten half of what you've learned. I'm sorry, not more. Not that would make you really. Anyway, I want to know from you that you've now the if you like, all of the paths have converged, and you're now in this place where you're able to learn all of the skills that you learned from your past. How do you go about learning for the future? You know, because your journey is one of learning, one of experimentation and bravery and things.
Correct.
How do you keep that going?
One of the key things related to design field in comparison to any other profession is any profession would require you to constantly learn and understand what are the new trends, what is the new thing in their particular field. But design field is such that it does not stop with understanding and learning what the new thing is. There's also a bit of creativity that you need to add, which is the flavor that you add to that particular thing to make it unique. Like for simple example, guys, we have been experimenting a lot with 3D printing these days in the office. Now, it can be looked at as a toy, as a tool, just to understand what 3D printing is all about, limitations of the machine that Nick has purchased for us, or just understand various different materials. Now, when you add your flavor into it is when you start coming up with, okay, there is this particular thing that I would like to 3D print, and how do I change the design so that I understand the limitations of this particular machine, bring in the learning of product design into it, understanding what 3D printing is all about, and also find a financial model as to, can we utilize this for something else? Can we monetize that particular thing that we're going to 3D print? So all of this comes in from your constant understanding of what are the emerging technology in our field, what are the emerging trends in our industry. At the same time, sticking to the very basics of making sure that whatever you 3D print, whatever you design, is a functional product at the end of it. It's not going to be just one of those curio cabinet items that you're going to print, which does not add value to anyone's life.
So Arjun, are you saying then that there are experiences and things that have happened in your past, let's call them dots, on your timeline, that they might not make sense, but at some point in the future, something might come along that makes those things in the past make sense and makes them relevant to the present. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is the way I see you. You know, I mean, you're an explorer, you know, and you're the guy that likes to find solutions to things. And I one of the things I love about you, and there are many, is that you're always trying to learn something new and trying to experiment with something. You know, we've got you. If you guys can hear the noise in the background, it's partly this air conditioning, which it sucks. It blows, but it sucks at the same time. And our 3D printer. And we've got back to the days when Arjun was a product designer in Italy, and he's designing some of his product, and he's taken one of the products he designs, and now we're experimenting with how to print it. It's very interesting, and I find it fascinating the way you've kind of dipped back into your past and made it relevant, and kind of given a modern twist on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool, Arjun. Very, very cool.
Arjun, you have experimented quite a bit with your life, right? And I believe you enjoyed the process and the phases that you went through your life now.
Yeah.
And I would also like to believe that today you are in a space where you are enjoying the work that you're doing. You are looking forward to much more innovation in the work that you're doing. But when was that point in your life when you thought to yourself, now this is what I want to do now, this is where I want to actually progress further, this is now okay, enough of experimentation of life? Did it happen consciously, or did it just happen as events of life turned on?
Or are you even there yet?
Oh yeah,
That's exactly. In
that's
all
also a
honesty,
valid question. Yeah.
my answer, I was just about to tell that experimenting phase, I don't think it will ever leave me.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about what you learned, what you've experienced that molds you. There's always also an element of what the person basically is.
Yeah.
You know, some people are curious. Some
Yeah.
people are more curious than what you are. And then there are people who, and then there are people who just don't. It doesn't affect them. What happens, how it happens. As long as their things are taken care of, they wouldn't bother about what happens in the background.
Yeah.
But then the inquisitive ones are the ones who always try to understand what happens behind the curtains.
Yeah. Yeah.
And fortunately, unfortunately, I'm one of those who's always inquisitive about, what if it was to be done in another way. So as long as that curiosity stays in me, I don't think I'll ever give up experimenting with my life. So
that's another thing on the list of things I love about this guy, because as they alluded to, I'm a crazy explorer. I don't sit still for 5 minutes, and this guy's just like me. And the messages we exchange late at night on WhatsApp are just crazy. He'll say, I've seen this, I'll say, I've seen that, and then the whole thing will just snowball into something, and next thing we know, we're, I don't know, doing God knows what.
The next thing we knew, you want to play.
That's only the start.
As long as it's not a canoe, it's fine.
I've done that, Arjun. That was another story. No, it's really, really interesting. I mean, your journey is one that never ends, huh? And I think as you mature and as you, I don't know, as you're influenced by the things around you and the people around you, it inspires you to try and discover new things. I think for all of us, I'd say that none of us are there. In fact, somebody said to me, I said to somebody earlier today, I should stop being a kid. And they said, for goodness sake, don't do that. And I think if I was to say the same to you, Arjun, a question to you, I think you'd probably respond in the same way. Stop being a kid, Arjun. And you'd say, well, no. Why would I stop being a kid? I love life. I'm experimenting all the time. I want to get better, And there's so much to learn out there.
True. And I'll tell you something. So every one of us, I'm sure there has been that one person or one defining moment which kind of gave you enough ammunition to propel forward with all your might in the direction that you want to go. And for me, I had to wait until my 4th year of architecture to find that moment. In all honesty, for 3 years, I love design. I could sketch what I'm thinking. And that's one of the reasons I continued being in architecture. Even a lot of my batchmates kept pulling out of the course. But in 4th year is when I worked with this architect called Joradi Kuna, and that was a life-changing experience for me.
Wow!
So he was the most humble person that I've come across. When you visit the site, he always comes into the office with his shorts on.
Oh, I don't know anybody else that does that.
Yeah. I know a few other people.
I definitely know one for sure.
Exactly. So he used to come in his shorts, and I used to look at him, and I'm like, are you the owner of this particular firm? I'm a boy who is like, 19?
These kind of thoughts come to my mind as well.
and he used to go to the site, and if he sees any other people doing any other work wrong, he's the kind of person who do not stand back or hold himself back in correcting them, and he doesn't correct them with his words. He just gets onto the field with them and does it all by himself.
Wow.
That had a profound influence on me. But one of the things what he has said, which stayed with me, which stays with me even to this day, is when you get good at something, when you keep repeating the same thing over and over again over a period of time, it is quite natural as human beings that we will equip ourselves with certain formulas, certain shortcuts of how to do it better.
Right.
But that's exactly the path will make the journey mundane. So he always says, try and find new innovative ways of doing things. And that had a profound influence on me.
Arjun, can I mind if I ask another question?
Yes, please.
I'd just like to ask you. It's a difficult question. I'm going to ask you, but somebody that's beginning their journey now, that if you rewind the clock back to when you were a younger man, what 3 things would you tell them to do in their life? How would you tell them? I mean, life and work for us blend. So, if in their career as a professional, bearing in mind we have people who aren't architects listening to our show, people who are perhaps an accountant, or maybe they work in a bank, or they do something else. What advice would you give somebody who's just starting out on their journey to help them to understand that they can get to the place that you're at?
The first thing what I would say is never give up on yourself. You will find a lot of people overtaking you in terms of your career, in terms of what they're achieving in life. There will be a lot of people, there are a lot of scenarios where people will doubt your capabilities, asking you, are you even doing the right thing in your life? You seem to be wasting time in your life. Do something better. Never give up. You should never stop believing in yourself. And the second thing what I would say is trust the journey that you're on. Now once you have that belief in yourself, there will naturally be that trust in the path, the choices that you're making, the decisions that you're making for yourself. You need to trust that process. You may not have visibility even 100 meters forward. What am I going to do in that path 100 meters from now, or 10 days from now, or 2 years from now? You may not have that visibility, but trust that it's all going in the right direction. What you need to stay true to is the purpose onto why you chose to be on that particular path. So as long as you do that, everything will work out to be fine. And the third thing what I would say is never stop exploring. One of the, I'm sorry to say this is not meant, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. Everybody is comfortable in something or the other what they keep doing. But I've seen that a lot of architects, at least in my part of the world, once they are done with their BArch course, they do a lot of residential projects. They're earning amazing money. They do have a standing in the society. People know them. It's all good. But at the end of the day, when you've completed probably 10 or 12 years, if I were to be in their shoes and look back, and if I see 10 houses almost having the same design language, I would tell myself you're a failure. Because even if the same design is being repeated, or the same design brief is given to me by 2 different clients, I would try and make sure I'm not copying this design to that, though it makes my life easier. So
interesting advice, Arjun.
Yeah. So try and keep challenging yourself on a daily basis to at least try something new once a month.
How many times? Sorry, Ravi, I'm hogging the mic again. I'm going to be quiet in a moment.
Well, I know you are very enthusiastic.
I am. I'm really interested in Arjun's story. Just a follow-on question, then I'm going to hand over to Ravi.
And I have also followed.
I want to know how many of those things you knew when you started your journey.
I knew nothing.
None of them.
None of them.
Because the advice is really great, and I think all of us can relate to it. In hindsight, if someone, and I heard we all probably did have people tell us to do these things, not the same, but similar, different, perhaps different, slightly different. And I used to sit there and think, okay,
how do I do it?
Yeah, but
The thing is, probably none of them is a wrong answer, because right from the start, I used to believe in myself. And I strongly believe that whatever choices I take a lot of time to make choices. I'm sure you guys do know that I at times I would wait for 80% clarity, 90% clarity at times to even move a finger. I've always believed that the choices that I'm making for myself is right. There were no architects in my family. no engineers from my family, and I was the first who was doing this. I was the first person to go outside of India within the small circle of my family. I'm not talking about my relatives or distant cousins and all that. So within that small circle, I was the first person to go outside of India to even learn design. And what do you learn in design? I don't know. What you're going to do after that? What are you going to design? I don't know. Are you going to design a Ferrari? I don't know. Are you going to design buildings? I don't know. Are you going to work with a famous architect in Italy? I don't know. This used to be my answer, but I trusted that journey. So somewhere I would say point number 2 that I said was in me, that the choices that I'm making for myself, I kind of trusted that process right from day one.
Brilliant.
Just like how I ended up being an architect. I had no clue until I completed my 12th standard what architecture was all about. I got intrigued and I trusted the process.
Brilliant. Thank you, Arjun. Brilliant. Brilliant.
I mean, I think as a part of our life journey, I'm sure on every one of us, self-doubt is pretty much a part of your life, right? In every step that you take in life, I think self-doubt is there. But then more than that, I think there is this passion and the calling for what you want to do. And end of the day, whatever you do, you have to enjoy. You have to feel satisfied within yourself. And when you put your head to your pillow in the night, you should feel really happy and content of what's going on in your life. It just doesn't need to be related to your lifestyle or money or anything. Anything, anything that makes you happy. It's easier said than done, and it takes a while for you to get there where you can actually start enjoying what you're doing. But I think it's a process. So looking back at your life, Arjun, are you able to pick maybe a couple of things, maybe 2 or 3 things which really your achievements maybe in your professional life which really still stay fresh with you today? And you're really proud of them?
So I wouldn't call it.
I'm sure there are many, but maybe in the context of time we can actually put
but rather than achievements, there are a few things which have stayed with me in terms of what I've done. They may not be mighty things to talk about when you look at my career as such. Having had about 13 to 15 years behind me in terms of being an architect, being a designer. So one of the things which have stayed with me, something that I did back in my architecture days. So when I was doing my thesis, there's a dissertation that you have to submit along with that, and it should not be a topic related to your thesis. This was one of the criteria that the college had put forward, and the topic that I chose was to come up with guidelines to classify buildings as male and females.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of
controversial, probably.
I kind of explored and came up with guidelines, which I believe, based on human characteristics of both male and females, I took both of those characters in terms of appearance, in terms of warmth, in terms of how resilient certain people are, in terms of being a man and a woman. And I applied those characters to form a guideline based on which I kind of came up with the so-called pointers that you can look at and say, that building probably is a male, or that probably from a design characteristics. That has stayed with me.
Maybe this is something our readers would be interested in looking at, Arjun, if you're prepared to share it.
I'm sure that report is still there in college archives somewhere. I would love to get a copy of that and read it now,
in hindsight.
after so many years. And probably I might have a big laugh about the kind of stuff what I've written there. Yeah.
But I think it's very interesting. You said this is because during many years, one of the years. I learned that certain types of design are masculine and certain types of design are feminine. So for example, if you look at retail design is much more feminine than masculine because of the audiences they cater to. If you look at stadiums, they are much more masculine and they're shouting out.
Correct.
So it's a very interesting study that you took back in the day because there is something called as masculine and femininity in the design.
Yes. And couple of things, couple of other things. What has stayed with me is in terms of the furniture design that I've done. during the process and developing the prototype. And during my work as a product designer, we have actually experimented how to cool the bed sheet actually, so that
I saw this project.
Yeah. So we have actually done a prototype wherein we experimented a lot with different compressors that's used in refrigeration units, trying to cool only a bed sheet, so that the amount of electricity consumed is less. It is affordable for much more economy class of people, rather than going for the masses per se, rather than targeting the premium segment. And there are a lot of other designs that I've done where there has been a social impact, all that have stayed with me. But I think one of the big moment of pride that I had was many years later, when I go to the site and the clients would ask me questions about how things are made on site. In Dubai, my face does not go pale anymore.
Somebody has to make you a partition wall.
You make others' faces go pale.
Yeah. So I think,
I love it. I think that's classic.
Wonderful.
Guys, I don't know about you guys, but we're being told that time's up now. I've got so much more.
I know. Even for me, I mean, I just feel that we can keep on talking actually.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll have to probably wrap up for today because I know that Arjun has an appointment to go to and we've got things we need to do. But I'd be really interested to hear what feedback from our listeners and viewers on this format. I personally, I think it's awesome. I've learned so much about my friends and my colleagues over the last few weeks, and I want to learn more. And hopefully you guys feel the same, and hopefully it's insightful for you, as insightful for you as it is for me. So I guess, guys, I'm sorry, Arjun, to stop the questions, but there's many more we want to ask.
I mean, it's a bit sad and unfortunate because we would have loved to continue actually.
Yeah, and thank you for your time and telling us your story today. It's inspiring, and it's no surprise because the man we know is an inspiring adventurer.
Absolutely.
And alongside that, he's a thoroughly decent man who finds my jokes funny. Yeah. He's in a very much small number of people that do. So I appreciate and respect you for that, Arjun, as well as all the other things.
One of the things I think I would like to share with our viewers is that Arjun is a complete go-getter, and just to prove that he has a fear of heights.
Oh yeah.
And thanks to one of our friends, who is a very dear friend of, but he didn't know that he had a fear of heights. He was booked onto Skydive Dubai, where you actually dive from 13,000 feet up in the air on a parachute. And we both were there with Arjun when this happened. And let me tell you, I was scared more than Arjun, and Arjun did it like he was a pro, So he's a complete go-getter, and once he sets his eyes on something, he will, before he achieves it, he will not rest.
Interesting, we set a theme with that, didn't we? So there's another person whose birthday is coming up soon in November.
Yes.
This is a person who can't swim. And this person has volunteered, in brackets, to go and swim with the sharks. Yes. So
I started this to celebrate Arjun's achievements, and it is kind of boomeranged.
The person has actually agreed for us to push him into the tank if his mind revolts against the idea.
Yeah.
This is what happens,
About 4 weeks to learn how to swim.
Yeah. No, Nick, you don't need to learn swimming to drown.
Oh, no.
So guys, I mean, have a look at me, and if you don't find me again on this podcast in a couple of weeks, you know where to find me.
It'll be Nick and Arjun.
Rev Arjun Shark Belly.
Guys, let's get on with the outro, shall we? I know we could talk all day. Right, so thank you for listening to the Art of Experiences. I'm Nick, this is Ravi, that's Arjun. I'd like to say special thanks to Arjun for sharing his journey with us today, talking about his experiences and what has made him the amazing, incredible human being he is today, one who's loved and cherished by certainly all of us here and many others, I'm sure. Thanks also to Dom for putting the podcast together and being our producer. Next week, I believe Dom will be in front of the camera. And we will be having a chat with her about some of the things that make her tick, and discussing our next subject, which will be revealed by me in a moment after I've allowed Ravi to speak.
Thank you, Nick, for allowing me to speak. All right, if guys, I know you guys are enjoying our show, and please leave us a review below. There are a lot of comments which are coming in, and we are enjoying reading those comments. So keep them coming up. And yeah, and also Arjun, thank you for sharing your life journey with us. It's a very interesting to know about your life journey, and I just wish probably we should do a part 2 sort of a thing maybe in a few weeks time. You know? Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you guys. And Nick, it's your turn to...
Join us on the next podcast. I think this should have been Arjun, but it's got my name against it. Thank you.
Right.
Join us on the next podcast. You haven't heard enough of me today. Not. Join us on our next podcast where we'll be talking about design for life. Now, that's an intriguing topic.
That's very
we won't tell you
interesting.
any more about what it is, but tune in next week. We'll be discussing design for life. But from all of us here, I'd like to wish you a goodbye from us. Don't forget to comment below. Be nice, say nice things about us, tell your friends, download our podcast, we're everywhere, and thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.